It's 1948. Jaguar unveils the XK Inline 6, a complete game-changer. This 3.4-liter powerhouse pushed the XK 120 past 120 miles per hour, making it the fastest production car in the world. It went on to dominate Le Mans 5 times, power everything from the C-Type to the E-Type, and turn Jaguar into a global performance icon. At the same time, XK engine built its legend on racetracks and magazine covers. Real-world ownership tells a very different story. Most Jaguar XK fans don't like to talk about it, but there is a reliability gremlins hiding under that gorgeous, polished cam cover. Popping the hood of a car powered by the XK Inline 6, you easily get distracted by the shine, the symmetry, and that deep, confident growl. But beneath all that beauty, there's a storm of chronic issues that have haunted this engine for decades. The biggest one? Coolant leaks. We're not talking about a harmless little drip you notice on the driveway. Nope, these leaks are sneaky. The kind where your coolant level drops mysteriously, but you never find a puddle. What's really happening is buried in the engine's architecture. The XK's long steel head studs actually run through the water jackets in the block. That means they're sitting in coolant every single time you drive. Over time, the coolant reacts with those studs, corroding them and eating away at their threads. Once corrosion sets in, the studs lose tension, the clamping pressure weakens, and the head gasket starts to give up. It's like a ticking clock, slow, silent, but inevitable. Then there's the other classic Jaguar calling card, oil leaks. Anyone who's owned an XK-powered car knows the drill. The engine bay always has a little glisten somewhere. Valve cover gaskets, timing chain covers, even the oil pan, they all love to seep. According to multiple service data analyses, around 80% of oil leaks on these engines trace back to worn oil system components, while the remaining 20% come from failing gaskets. Combine that with decades of under-hood heat and aging rubber, and you've got yourself a perfect storm. Not only is it messy, but the escaped oil can cook on the block, creating hot spots and further stressing already fragile seals. And then comes the head gasket failure, the grand finale of this mechanical tragedy. It's where those coolant and oil problems finally collide. The corroded studs weaken the head seal, oil leaks boost heat, and soon the gasket can't hold combustion pressure. You'll start to see the telltale signs: milky residue under the oil cap, a faint sweet smell of antifreeze, or puffs of white smoke from the exhaust. Ignore them and things escalate fast, overheating, warped heads, and eventually full-on engine failure. Some owners of the later 4.2-liter XK have even reported needing their third gasket replacement before hitting 150,000 miles, despite diligent maintenance. Now here's the twist. This isn't because Jaguar didn't know how to build engines. The XK Inline 6 was engineered with boldness and precision, decades ahead of its time. But the materials and chemistry that made it so advanced in 1948 eventually turned against it. The iron block, aluminum head, and steel studs. A beautiful trio that, in theory, made for strength and performance, also created the perfect environment for galvanic corrosion over the years. So the next time you admire a classic Jaguar, remember this. Those little leaks and stains aren't just quirks. They're warning signs, small glimpses into the hidden reliability problems of one of history's most brilliant yet demanding engines. Next, let's just dive into one of the most underappreciated problems with the mighty XK Inline 6. How cooling system wear and corrosion quietly chip away at its reliability, both on your regular drive and over the long haul. When you drive your car, you expect it to warm up, run flat out or cruise, then cool down and repeat. But for the XK engine, that cycle is tougher than you'd think. The water jackets and coolant passages are relatively narrow and have to cope with an iron block, an aluminum head, steel studs, and different metals expanding and contracting at different rates. Over time, if the coolant is old or mixed improperly, corrosion sets in. According to the technicals, corrosion in an aluminum head is directly related to the level of maintenance done, and most people don't realize that antifreeze has more than the antifreeze and anti-boil functions. It also has anti-corrosion properties. On a daily drive, that means small warning signs. The temperature gauge creeps up in stop-and-go traffic, the engine takes longer to warm up, and you may notice the coolant level slowly dropping even though you don't see an obvious external leak. What's happening is the cooling system's flow is being restricted by internal buildup, sludge, scale, Corrosion deposits? One of the owners even found the brown corrosion deposits, the water galleries in the cylinder block, more than an inch deep behind the jacket side plates. Now, if you can imagine that repeated thousands of times, heat stays a little higher, the metal head and block run a little hotter, clamping pressures on gaskets drop, and the head sealing surface gradually degrades. The long stud design in later engines, which passes through the water jackets, means those studs see coolant all the time, making them corrosion points. Over years and decades, this doesn't stay just a minor maintenance issue. It becomes a root cause of head gasket failure, warped heads, pitting, and shortened longevity. In plain words, if your cooling system isn't treated as a first-class member of your engine maintenance schedule, fresh fluid, proper inhibitor, thorough flushes, the XK engine will bite back. Regular driving won't feel dramatic at first, but the damage accumulates silently. The result? A once legendary engine that cost more to repair and lasted less than you'd hope. Enjoying the video? Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's be honest, when you buy a car with a pedigree like the Jaguar XK Inline 6, you're not just buying transportation. You're buying history, craftsmanship, and that unmistakable sound that turns heads from half a block away. At first, it feels like you've made it. That smooth, cultured hum under the hood, the polished aluminum, the badge that whispers heritage. But give it some time, and that dream slowly starts to reveal its true personality, one that likes your attention and also your wallet. See, the XK engine is a work of art, but it's also a bit of a diva. Routine maintenance? Forget the word routine. This isn't a Toyota where an oil change and filter swap keep things happy. On an XK, every service can turn into a mechanical adventure, or a bill that makes your jaw drop. And it's not because mechanics are overcharging, it's because the engine's complex internals and shrinking parts supply make even basic jobs harder than they should be. Take the head gasket replacement, for example, a repair that's practically a rite of passage for XK owners. According to RepairPal, the average cost in the US runs between $3,452 and $4,658. That's not a full rebuild, that's just the gasket job. And that number assumes everything goes smoothly, no seized head studs, no corroded threads, no, oh look, we need to machine the head again. The moment one of those studs snaps, and they often do, your repair cost jumps dramatically. And don't even think a radiator swap will save the day cheaply. A radiator replacement typically costs between $1,809 and $1,979. The parts alone are pricey, but it's the labor that stings. Many shops bill extra time just to get around the XK's tightly packed engine bay and those awkward hose connections that look like they were designed by someone with 3 elbows. Even the smaller stuff isn't exactly small. Something like an oil pan gasket replacement might sound simple, right? Well, mobile mechanic estimates hover around $355, but that's in a perfect world. Start dealing with stripped bolts or warped surfaces, and you're back in the 4-figure danger zone. On average, owners can expect to spend around $1,000 a year on maintenance, without factoring in major failures. Then there's the availability issue. This is an engine that first appeared in 1948 and soldiered on until the early 1990s. But Jaguar didn't exactly keep the parts pipeline flowing forever. Some components are now so rare that Jaguar's classic parts division has stepped in, and their prices reflect it. A brand new 3.8-liter XK engine block? That'll be about 14,340 pounds, roughly 17,000 US dollars, just for the block itself. So here's the real talk. The XK engine doesn't just run on premium fuel, it runs on commitment. It rewards careful owners with performance, sound, and history you can't buy in modern cars. But if you think you're signing up for cheap thrills, think again. With the XK, even routine maintenance can hit exotic car levels of expense. You buy it because you love it, you drive it because you can't resist it, but you keep it because you're ready for the reality that every mile costs a little bit more than you planned. And honestly, for many Jaguar lovers, that's still worth every penny. The legacy 6-cylinder engine in the Jaguar XK has a sterling reputation, but it also carries some surprising weak points that many fans simply overlook. Let's talk about them. First up, under-hood heat. When you pull the bonnet on a classic XK, you see beauty and engineering finesse. What you don't always see, the engine bay gets seriously toasty. Tight packaging, metal-on-metal clearances, and the aluminum head cast iron block combo all mean thermal stress runs high. This isn't just about it gets warm, It's about how that heat accumulates, how it affects gaskets, seals, and even the internals. According to most forum posts we found about the XK engine, one persistent headache is that the head studs run through the water jackets and can corrode, allowing sealing pressure to drop over time. That corrosion and heat combination quietly accelerates gasket wear, oil seepage, and worst-case head gasket failure. Second, electronic gremlins in later XK models. While the original six-cylinder era engines were largely mechanical, later derivatives and later Jaguar models introduced more sensors, modules, and wiring complexity. It's been documented, for example, that in the X150 generation XK, the battery's health or ground connections have a significantly outsized effect on multiple systems, dash warnings, ABS-DSC faults, and even limp mode triggered by seemingly unrelated faults. In simple words, a weak battery or a corroded connector can masquerade as a significant engine fault. The gremlin might not live mechanically in the engine, but it stops you in your tracks just the same. Third, what's often overlooked is the combination of these weak points. Underhood heat stresses the rubber hoses, quickens the aging of wiring insulation, dries out gaskets faster, electronics age, get exposed to excessive heat and vibration, and fail quietly. Add a handful of miles, ignore a small seep or a faint warning, and suddenly you're repairing multiple failures rather than one isolated issue. So in short, if you're using the XK in regular driving, urban stops, short runs, warm climates, these hidden weak spots matter. They don't steal headlines like engine blew, but they chip away at reliability and cost over time. Understanding them changes the story from legendary engine to legendary engine that needs respect and vigilance. Let's talk about one of those engineering decisions that seemed brilliant at the time, but ended up being a slow-burning reliability tick for the Jaguar XK Inline 6. On many of the later versions of this engine, the head studs, those bolts that secure the cylinder head, were designed to pass through the engine's water jackets. That means they sit in the coolant all day. Sounds okay, right? Here's why it's not. Those long studs are exposed to coolant, which over years and decades creates a perfect storm. Corrosion from dissimilar metals, steel studs, aluminum head, cast iron block, stagnant zones within the water jacket, and weakened clamping pressure. According to technical documentation, one part supplier states the 4.2-liter engine was modified. Several of the head studs actually sit in the water jacket. Over a period of years, the studs will corrode, and the corrosion will build up and push the head up from the block surface. What's the real-world effect of this? Imagine you drive your Jaguar for 10 or 20 years. The engine's had many heat cycles. Coolant may have been serviced by previous owners, but perhaps not perfectly, and those long studs have been slowly rusting away. That corrosion can cause the studs to lose their preload, i.e., the clamping force they apply, which means the head gasket isn't being squeezed properly. Engineers note this: when the stud's cross-section goes down because of corrosion pits, you can't maintain the specified torque and seal. The downstream consequences: increased susceptibility to head gasket failure, coolant leakage past the head gasket, warping of the head, and costly machining or extraction of studs that have seized solid. So what we're saying is, this isn't a defect that shows up in the first year or two. It's the creeping legacy of a design choice, amplified by time, heat, moisture, and imperfect maintenance. In other words, you can love the XK engine's sound and presence, but you can't ignore the fact that these long water jacket studs set a timer on reliability. If you're buying or maintaining one, this is the kind of hidden wrinkle you need to know about. Let's talk honestly for a second. The Jaguar XK Inline 6 isn't just an engine, it's a legend. Enthusiasts call it silky, bulletproof, even immortal. It powered icons like the C-Type, D-Type, and the E-Type, winning races and hearts along the way. To most car lovers, the XK isn't just part of Jaguar's history, it is Jaguar's history. But like most legends, there's a difference between the story and the reality, and that gap is where the truth hides. On paper, this engine was a masterpiece. Twin overhead cams, hemispherical combustion chambers, a smooth straight six layout, technology decades ahead of its time in 1948. And when it's maintained the way Jaguar intended, it's honestly brilliant. Many longtime owners who treat their cars with care, fresh coolant, proper oil, and regular use report years of smooth, drama-free driving. They'll tell you the XK is reliable if you respect it, and they're not wrong. But here's where things get real. The XK's reputation for invincibility doesn't always line up with real-world ownership, especially today. The same design brilliance that made it famous also created some ticking time bombs. Overheating, creeping coolant loss, oil seepage, and in later models, electrical headaches. These are the kinds of issues that pop up more often than most fans like to admit. Take owner reports from later XK8 and XKR forms. Many discuss repeated misfire and overheating problems tied to aging coolant hoses, failing thermostats, or corroded connectors. None of it's catastrophic individually, but stack those gremlins together and the myth starts to crack. And you know what they say, the XK will run forever if you never let it stop. And that really is the trick. It's an engine that hates sitting still. When left unused, coolant passages rust, oil drains from the top end, and those tight tolerances start to work against you. Jaguar's own technical notes from the 1960s mention coolant galleries clogging with rust over time, which can eventually cause overheating or even piston seizure. It wasn't a flaw in design so much as a side effect of time. The XK simply wasn't built for a 40-year service life. Reliability scoring sites might give the XK a glowing rating, some as high as 919 out of 999 in certain maintenance categories. But those numbers mostly reflect short-term dependability, not long-term survival or repair cost after decades of wear. Talk to members of classic Jaguar clubs, and you'll hear a different tune. Many stories start with, "It ran perfectly for years," and end with, "Then one small thing snowballed." Usually it's a cooling issue, corrosion, or a part no longer in production that sends owners on a long, expensive hunt. So here's the truth. The XK engine earns its myth, but it doesn't hand it out for free. If you give it the care, warmth, and consistency it demands, it rewards you with that unmistakable sound and character no modern motor can touch. The XK isn't unreliable, it's just unforgiving. Treat it right and it'll be a legend in your garage. Treat it wrong and it'll remind you that myths only survive when they're maintained. So there you have it, the real story behind the legendary XK Inline 6. It's not a bad engine. In fact, it's one of the most character-filled power plants ever built. But it's kind of one that asks for respect. Ignore the coolant, skip maintenance, or overlook corrosion, and it'll quietly turn on you. Yet when cared for properly, it runs smoothly, sounds glorious, and lasts decades. So would you ever take on an XK knowing its quirks and costs? Or does that kind of challenge make the reward even sweeter? And if you've owned or driven one, what's your experience been like? Leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe for more videos on iconic machines that shaped automotive history.